This one is called The Blind of Geneva. My oldest best friend since 1967 is Helga Abraham, who now resides in Jerusalem and has become a proud Israeli. Helga influenced my early life and was the first Sephardic Jew I ever met. She was born in Egypt and French educated, living in Cairo until Nasser forced the Jews out in 1956. The Abraham family moved to 28 Ellington Road, Muswell Hill, London. Joe, her father, who had been a journalist in Cairo, was a lecturer in economics at the London School of Economics, LSE. He was a Baghdadi Jew originally from Iraq, but grew up in Shanghai. Somehow he settled in Cairo. Her Russian mother, Sylvia, grew up in Cairo, although she was born in Odessa, Russia, originally called Sippora. She had been a singer and a child prodigy at the tender age of 13. She was also an accomplished pianist and taught the piano when she finally settled in North London. She in turn had a sister called Ida, who moved to Geneva after 1956 with her Egyptian husband of Syrian Jewish parentage. They had no children, and so Helga was treated like her daughter, always receiving wonderful hand-knitted or crocheted sweaters and jackets throughout the 70s. I would be so jealous of all these wonderful time-consuming handmade knitwear creations, which to buy would have cost a fortune. Helga's brother Victor, who was a mathematician, eventually married a Hungarian woman called Aniko, and I was invited to the wedding in North London. There I saw for the only time Helga's aunt and uncle, the honoured special guests from Geneva. It was a memorable international gathering with guests from Budapest and Geneva and further afield. I still have the photo of myself that day with streaks of grey mesh in my parted-in-the-middle hair, so popular in the 70s, and wearing a vintage silver fox fur stole over a black dress with a turquoise 1975 American Navajo necklace bought in Albuquerque. The years rolled by. Helga's mother died unexpectedly on the operating table, leaving an emotional Helga closer than ever to her aunt. When Ida was eventually widowed, she would often ask Helga to visit her in Geneva from Jerusalem. She needed help because her eyesight was failing fast, and she knew one day she would be blind. Helga, her dutiful niece, would accompany her to the bank, where she kept a deposit box with documents and cash from her husband's banking days. The bank, however, were the executors of Ida's will. Throughout her life, she had always said Helga and her brother Victor would inherit whatever she had. She lived frugally in a rented flat in the centre of the city. One day, everything changed. She accused Helga of stealing a document that she couldn't see in her bank deposit box. Instead of getting the constant accompanying bank clerk to look thoroughly through her papers, it was easier to blame poor innocent Helga, who was there with her in the private locked room. Thus she threatened to cut Helga and Victor out of her will. Neither believed the rantings of the now blind, demented woman. More years went by, and finally she was at death's door. Helga had drifted from her aunt over the missing document incident, and so Victor was elected to persuade his aunt to change the will she had declared she had changed, taking sadistic pleasure in taunting her family. Victor and Joe flew to Geneva to be at her bedside, but the stubborn woman would not change her mind, leaving all her assets to the charity, the Blind of Geneva. After her death, the missing document was found, of course, where it had always been, in the box. Helga couldn't fight the bank for negligence from Israel, nor Victor from London. Under Swiss law, a proportion had to go to the next of kin, and so Helga received a very small proportion of what she had been promised, plus some Egyptian rugs and her uncle's library. That was where I came in. I was living in Paris in the late 70s and working as a juvenilia book dealer between London and Paris. I had a couple of colleagues in Geneva and a cousin Philip. One day Helga phoned me to help her sell the books. She was staying in her aunt's flat, and so off I went to Geneva for an intense, eventful week. I gasped when I saw the flat. The decor was totally 1950s. Time had stood still. It was small, very orange, ochre and brown, the autumn colours popular in that decade and Gemütlichkeit. I stayed a week with the worst cold ever caught from Helga, introducing her to a book dealer who bought the whole collection. Helga met my cousin Philip Selby, and they are still friends today, even though I am no longer in touch. I did not enjoy Geneva one scrap. I was taken to dinner by a Jewish-Hungarian-Swiss citizen, a lottery ticket and share certificate collector I had met at the Ephemera Society in London. He told me how he disliked living in Geneva and explained he had no choice as he was interned in a transit camp at the end of the war in Budapest. He was standing in front of a door when he heard an announcement over the loudspeaker that they were giving a limited number of exit visas to Switzerland. The door number was given and it was the one he was standing outside. So Switzerland it had to be. We ate sweetmeats, bull's balls, which I hated. I couldn't stop sneezing at the table and my nose was dripping into the onion soup when, out of the blue, he asked me if I wanted to go to bed with him. Why are men such idiots? He asked me. Oh, he must have been completely desperate for sex, the furthest thought on my mind. Maybe the bull's balls got him ready for action, or the French word for the share certificate, les actions. I stared at the phone in Ida's flat, desperately wanting to call my mother's best friend, Nancy Poirel, who spent half her time in Geneva as an invigilator, and ask about my mother's French-Turkish lover, but did not dare. I was duped by a Swiss book dealer paying for a German Meggendorfer mechanical book at the weekly flea market that he said he had in his bookshop. He promised he would post it to me in London as I was leaving the next day. I trusted him, but it never arrived. For Helga, it was the final Swiss chapter in her life. The Geneva book was done and dusted, as they say in the trade, but Zurich Zusper Collectors Trade Fair was yet to come, with trouble from the Swiss Customs Police in Hall 6 some years later. And that was written in the Hotel Plaza Cabana in Nerja, Spain, in February this year.
Right, now that was very interesting, but